Okay, so just so everybody knows, I am recording. I can always pause the recording if you want to say something that you don't want on the record. Um, so I'm really glad everybody's joining me and we're joining together. Um, this is a one-off session I wanted to offer and a subject I really wanted to deal with. Um, we do have a regular Talmud class on Wednesdays, and this is the slot. And um, I may shift and do a series in that slot of Talmudic sources that are related to contemporary issues. And I would love for you guys to join it if you enjoy this. Um, so I want to say a little bit about why this is on my heart before we jump in. Many of you know that there is an immigrant family I've been helping for almost 2 years now. And this man, Ali, he had to flee Bangladesh, flee the Muslim world, and it was so hard for him to find anywhere safe. His family, they went to India. They weren't allowed to immigrate into India because they were on the books, they were Muslim, even though they wanted to leave Islam. They ended up in Uzbekistan, but they were illegal. They couldn't get to America um, because America is not letting people in. Yes, Melina.
Dear Rabbi, I just asking this for my own information. Is in their country um saying bye to Islam and converting to another religion cost to death penalty?
Yeah, death
Uh,
penalty. Yeah. And actually, they accused him of no longer believing in Islam. They wanted him to apologize. And that was kind of what precipitated their fleeing because he was he didn't want to apologize. And I told him just apologize, make nice. He didn't want to apologize. So that's when they fled. Um, so I have a lot of sympathy for immigrants who have nowhere safe to go, and that's what's on my heart. So really, the halachic question is it can we tell someone not to come in? Can we label someone as illegal, right? Someone it's easy to say, oh well, yeah, if someone comes in and they break the rules coming in, it's illegal, therefore they're an illegal immigrant. But really, the question is it halachically okay to shut the door and say, no, you can't come, right? Is it okay to make someone an illegal immigrant? And of course, I put this picture of this cute kid here because it's like, who wouldn't want this cute kid coming in? So in Leviticus, it says, when a stranger resides with you in your land, and the word for stranger in Hebrew, and we know the word for stranger? I'm sure you know. I'm sure something. Melina, I know you know. Eric, you unmuted?
Um, Immigrant? I don't know.
What's a convert called in Hebrew?
oh, goy.
Going.
Not goy. Goy is nation. Goy is a non-Jew. Ger. Ger. So ger comes from the Hebrew to live. So ger simply means someone who's living somewhere. That's really what ger means. Um, and in the Bible, there's this phrase, the stranger who resides with you. It's called ger tatoshav. Ger toshav. So this is a stranger. So okay, let me finish the verse. When a stranger resides with you in your land, you shall not wrong him. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your citizens. You shall love him as yourself, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So in biblical Israel, what was this stranger? Who would be a stranger? What does this describe? What kind of person would this describe?
Idol worshippers?
Well, actually, no. It's interesting. Idol worshippers are not allowed in the land of Israel. So if you look here, Maimonides, this is the next slide. It's forbidden to allow an idolater among us. So actually, this ger is not an idolater. They follow here. Let me finish the Maimonides here. Even a temporary resident, that's the ger toshav, or a merchant who travels from place to place, someone who's just flying into Israel to sell stuff, should not be allowed to pass through our land until he accepts the 7 universal laws commanded to Noah, the 7 Noahide laws. As the verse states, they shall not dwell in your land even temporarily. A person who accepts these 7 mitzvot is a ger toshav, a resident alien. So actually, this person who is living, this stranger, is not murdering. They're not committing. They're not. They're following the laws. They don't. They're not an idolater, but they're not Jewish. So in biblical Israel, there was no way to become Jewish per se, right? You were kind of either born an Israelite or you moved in, you wanted to live in the land of Israel, and you followed the seven Noahide laws, and that made you a ger. Okay, is that clear? So, so now it says, "They shall be as one of your citizens; you shall love him as yourself." So, what kind of things do you think that implies about this foreigner residing in the land? Melanie, you don't have to raise your hand.
You mean like the non-Jews who are living in the land of Israel?
Yeah, so this is talking about a non-Jew living in the land of Israel, but they're not like murderous. They're not an idolater. So they're non-Jew, but they're following basic laws of ethics, right? So we have to love them as ourselves. What do you think that means? Right? So they get this extra protection, right? It doesn't say we have to love, well, it does kind of say we have to love your fellow, it does say we have to love your fellow Jew as yourself, but then we also have to love the scare as ourselves. Right? So I have to be as concerned for their well-being as I am for my own well-being. Um, in America, right? Who would we classify as the ger? Who would this apply to if we applied this to America?
Mexicans.
It would
I'm a
apply to
Mexican.
Mexicans.
Yeah.
It would absolutely would apply to Mexicans. And it means there's a special mitzvah to love to love you, to love the Mexican more than someone who's not a ger. Now, why would there be a special mitzvah to love the ger?
I think it says because the strangers you worked in the land of Egypt, something.
Well, okay, that's no, yeah, that's the explanation it's giving here, right? Like you've been in that position, but I'm from a big picture, why would God want it to be a mitzvah to love the ger? Why is that important to God? Why does the Torah, why does Moshe need to legislate that?
They are his just as much as anybody else.
So, okay, they're his just as much as anybody else.
It says,
And they're, yeah,
it says the stranger is one we are taught to love precisely because he is not like ourselves.
yes. So that you're reading the Jonathan Sacks, right?
I am.
So he's not like ourselves. So where Jonathan Sacks is going is, okay, he's not like us, so we're tempted not to love him, right? We see someone who's Mexican. Sorry to pick on Mexicans, Eric, but you know, right? You mentioned it, right? So we see someone who's Mexican and we say, my God, they have brown skin, they have a weird accent, they're weird, and we get all xenophobic. So in other words, it's fighting xenophobia, right? That Moshe knows that xenophobia is built into the human psyche. Moshe and God know this. And so to fight that, there has to be a special mitzvah of loving the person who's different than us, right? In order to fight xenophobia, because xenophobia is such a powerful force. Um, did I just freeze? No, I just lost it. Okay. Um, Another possibility, right? So one is that it's fighting xenophobia. And by the way, right, I don't know if everybody here, I know some people here are not even in America. Um, there was a moment where Donald Trump said, "Oh, I want more Norwegians," right? And he brought in white South Africans because of the genocide against white South Africans that isn't even actually happening, right? So it's very easy to bring in people who look like you. It's very easy to love people who look like you. It's but the mitzvah really is to love people who don't look like you. Um, in yeshiva, they always taught us that the Torah doesn't bother prohibiting things we don't do. It makes rules about things that it doesn't. It prohibits things that we're inclined to do. Um, the other possibility, the other thing I think about is the ger is vulnerable, right? A non-Jew living in the land, they have no family, they have no connections. They're very vulnerable. Um, when I think about vulnerable immigrants, have been stories of multiple stories of Chinese and Indian people who are smuggled into America and then essentially become slaves. That the people who smuggle them in say, well, you have to work for us, or we'll send you over to immigration. And that's actually, a slave trade in America. So, right, there's this mitzvah to love them and protect them because they're a vulnerable population. Any other comments on this verse? Okay. So one of the blood libels, right, the libels that get put against immigrants is that, oh, well, we should keep them out because we have to protect ourselves. So there's just some interesting statistics out there that in fact, immigrants and especially illegal immigrants are more law-abiding than native-born Americans. So you can find lots and lots of statistics showing this. One example is Texas crime rates. Violent crimes, higher by US-born citizens, lowest by undocumented immigrants. Property crimes, again, highest by US-born, lowest by undocumented immigrants. Drug violations, who's doing drugs? It's American citizens. Over on the right, incarceration of, Marcel's here. Incarceration of rates of men ages 18 to 39 without a high school diploma. Almost 10% of native-born Americans who don't graduate high school, and among Mexicans, 0.7%. Right? So it's the whole accusation that immigrants are criminals and all this, right? It is actually a libel. And when I think about loving the immigrants as ourselves, loving the ger as ourselves, right? This is the opposite of that. To accuse them as a whole of being criminal, et cetera, is a libel. So in the contemporary world, what does ger mean? So just a little bit of history, right? When the Jews left the land of Israel, we got kicked out of the land of Israel. Ger now means convert because it couldn't mean a foreigner living in your land. We didn't have a land that didn't exist. So instead, ger became the religious convert. And loving the ger, there's this idea that we can't remind them of their origins and we have to be especially nice to them. We don't consider someone to be a ger, we just consider them to be a Jew. But I think there's something powerful in this mitzvah of loving the stranger, right? Both because of that they're different than us, and there's a temptation to mistreat someone and be suspicious of someone who's different than us, and also because they're unprotected and vulnerable. Okay, so the reason it gave in the verse was that we were strangers. So this is a verse about being strangers in Egypt. How was our experience in Egypt similar to that of, well, how was it a refugee experience? So here's what we say about being in Egypt. My father was a wandering Aramean. Does it feel like Passover again? Does it feel like Passover now? We read this in Haggadah. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there. But there he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to the Lord, the God of our fathers, and the Lord heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery, and our oppression. The Lord freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm and awesome power, and signs and portents. He brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So if the Torah is saying that's what it's like being a stranger, what's it like being a stranger, being a foreigner? What's it like being a foreigner? If this is what it's like being a foreigner.
You mean what's it like here in the United States? Well, I'm in the
No. I'm going to get to that. That's the next step. But what picture does this text paint of what was it like being strangers in Egypt, being foreigners in Egypt? So if our story in Egypt was that of a foreigner, what was our experience like as foreigners in Egypt?
Well, it says that right there. It was horrible. We were slaves.
We were enslaved. We were taken advantage of. Yes. right? We cried out and God heard us. Is this in any way similar to the immigrants, to the strangers now in America?
Sure.
So how's it similar?
Well, where I live, there's a lot of migrant work,
Uh-huh.
and um, the dwellings that are provided are so hidden, so nobody else can see how poorly people are being treated. It's horrible. I used to be a teacher, and a lot of my kids had parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles who were migrant workers. Those kids didn't have, again, I'm in Michigan, so it gets cold here in the winter. And if they hadn't moved to another location to, to work, they didn't have proper clothing. They didn't have proper
Mm,
food. They didn't have, it was horrible, you know? Um, and they were at the mercy of other people. I guess that's what I think of most, is that they
right.
really could not provide for themselves. Yeah, that's what it's like here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Eric, were you going to talk? I thought I saw you.
Oh, I don't know what I did with the
Oh, it's
pencil, and I
okay.
was, yeah,
You
I'm
touched
sorry.
the screen. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
Well,
If you were a kid, you'd get in trouble for doodling, but I know it wasn't on purpose.
yeah, I'm on my phone, so I'm trying to, yeah.
Okay. Did anybody else have a comment on what this is saying about being a stranger? So, right, I think, right, bad conditions, right? In Egypt, of course, the conditions were imposed on us, right? They intentionally gave us bad conditions, but still heavy labor, right? We have immigrants really doing all the heavy labor. Um, right. And not in here in Florida, there were a lot of issues around safety where they didn't want to do safe working conditions. Um, Perhaps not quite as bad in, as it was in Egypt, but certainly not giving the this. What about illegal immigrants? What about people who are undocumented? I mean, when I think about, right, now we're talking about people, yeah, Melina.
Rabbi David, I want to speak about my country, France. I have no idea about any other countries, okay? In our
Of course.
country, unfortunately, it's not about everyone. First of all, is about our government, who is not organizing the story of refugees, illegal immigrants, etc. But unfortunately, everything happens in this country. I mean, robberies, bad situations. You see,
Yeah.
all unfortunately, all came from not legal immigrants. And for me, I am an immigrant too, but I am a real immigrant. You see, like it's officially that I immigrated with documents, everything. But even for me, it makes me scared. You
Hmm.
see what I mean? Because of this bad experience that I've had.
Okay, that's fair. So, and I don't know the statistics for France, right? I looked up the statistics for America, but I don't know the statistics for France. So that's very fair. Um, so, and our interesting idea that I've heard is that Abraham and Sarah, in a sense, were also refugees. So in Genesis, there was a famine, and Abraham and Sarah have to go down to the land of Egypt. They're worried. Abraham's worried that they're going to take Sarah, kill him. So Abraham tells Sarah to pretend to be his sister. And the king takes her, and God sends a plague, and then he sends him back. So here's what he writes. In the Bible's book of Genesis, we read about Abraham and Sarah's journey to the promised land. Shortly after they arrive, they encounter famine and head to Egypt in search of food. So similar, right? To remind you of refugees now, right, in search of economic opportunities. Foreigners without family or clan to protect them, they are afraid. Abram asks Sarah to pretend to be his sister in the hope that this will help them avoid trouble. An act of deceit that made sense in the context of their times. The gamble works out badly. Pharaoh's courtiers notice Sarah's beauty, and the king summons her to his harem. Only divine intervention lets Sarah escape without having to sleep with the king. It's a pitiable story. Abraham and Sarah lie and humiliate themselves to try to survive in a foreign nation they have not received permission to enter. It must have been agonizing. It's the stories of strangers in a strange land without protection, without connections, and without a right to go about their business unmolested. It's an illegal immigrant story. So any comments on that? I love this. I love this passage. I love this idea that Maurice shared, right? That Abraham and Sarah had this experience of being an illegal immigrant. Any? Okay. So in the Talmud, I promised halacha. So in the Talmud, there is a statement, and here's what it says. Now, when something's in brackets, what does that mean? When something's in brackets in the Talmud, what does that mean?
Well, it's like further explanation. Is
By
it
who? Who wrote the further explanation? Who wrote it?
Oh, rabbis wrote it.
Well, rabbis at the time of the Talmud, or the rabbi who made this translation?
I think it's the one who made, I don't know.
Yes, yeah.
I'm
So,
guessing it's the one who made the translation because
yes,
it's bracketed, it came afterwards, right?
the bracket means it's not really there.
Oh,
So, I I am going to cross out the bracketed parts. Try not to be influenced by what's there because, okay, so here we go. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, said, "It's quite clear to me that the residents of one town can prevent the resident of another town, but not, however, if he pays taxes to that town, and the resident of an alley cannot prevent another resident of the same alley." So the context here is talking about preventing someone else from setting up a business. That's the context. It's not talking about preventing people from moving in, just preventing a business. And the reason they can say this is because you're descending into my business. You're preventing me from earning an income. So what is Rav Huna saying? What does that mean? I can prevent the resident of another town from doing this.
Like I can forbid that he does business in my town.
Yeah, you can't have a chain store, right? If Marcel, you're from Aldi, and I love Aldi. I shop there all the time because it's great. But right, the people who own Aldi, this text would say you cannot start an Aldi. It has to be independently owned. It has to be independently owned and operated. You can't own a business in another town because if you do that, you're preventing someone in the other town from earning a livelihood. It's called Yored Latoch Umanut Shel Chavero, descending into someone else's livelihood. So I can prevent someone else. Can that person move to my town and then set up a business?
only if they pay taxes,
Yeah,
right?
if they pay. So what does that mean?
It's
What do they have
legal.
to do? Yeah, it's legal.
Yeah.
They come to my town, they pay taxes. They've really fully moved, right? I'm not like living in the other town paying my taxes there. I've moved to your town, I pay my taxes. It's legal. And I cannot prevent you from starting a business. Based on this, can I prevent an immigrant from coming to town by saying, oh, there's not enough jobs?
Not if they're pay taxes.
They're going to pay taxes, right? They're going to come, they're going to pay their
Then no, you
no,
can't. Yeah.
right? So based on this, it really seems you actually cannot prevent someone from coming to town. Any other readings of this?
He's gonna make the business. The immigrant is gonna make the business. He's gonna make his own.
He does,
for
whether
living.
or not. So the text is about him making a business, right? The text doesn't imagine that I would keep him out just to keep him out, right? The text is only imagining, okay, I'm keeping him out because I don't want competition, right? I've got my carpentry shop. I don't want somebody else opening another carpentry shop in town. It's going to take away my business.
But isn't this more like you don't want to have another carpentry shop that doesn't provide for the income of the city? Like, because if the other shop pays taxes, then it would be allowed to offer services and so on.
And when it says he pays taxes to that town, Rashi says, and I think well, I don't know. You know what? Rashi says it's a head tax. It's a residency tax. Now,
Okay.
but you're right. You know, that would be an interesting reading where you say, oh no, this is actually. But if it's a business tax, of course it's going to pay the business tax, right? That, you know, if he's, I don't know. You could try to read it that way. I don't want to shut it down,
Okay.
right? I don't want to shut that down. But Rashi reads that it's a residency tax.
Okay.
Which would mean that you simply halachically we should, according to Rav Huna, there shouldn't be any chain stores. There shouldn't, like, the whole, you know, in America, I don't know about, you know, France and Germany, but in America, Walmart put out of business all these small stores. Home Depot put out of business all the mom and pop, you know, hardware stores. So this, according to this, right, that should never have happened, right? And really, what you see happening with these chain stores is it ruins small businesses and a couple of people get really rich. And in a sense, this is against that. So the Chafetz Chaim, he had a store and it was very popular. I think it was the Chafetz Chaim. It was very popular because they knew he was honest. So everybody would go to his store and he was getting really worried that other people weren't able to earn a livelihood. So then he he said, okay, I'm only open like Mondays and Thursdays. And that still didn't work. People still all came to the store. So then he closed the front door and he only had the door in the back. And it's like, if you knew about the back door, you'd come in and shop. But right, he really did not want to descend into his neighbor's livelihood. We're not supposed to try to become so rich that we destroy the middle class. You know, sadly, this is certainly what's happening in America anyway. But yeah, so it seemed that was a digression. I apologize. It really seems to me that, you know, this is saying I can't stop you from making a business in my town. So would there be any grounds to stop you from living here? I don't think so. If my friend Brian were here, he would argue. Okay. Another interesting passage from same area of the Talmud. If the resident of a courtyard may be forced to contribute to the building of a gatehouse and a door for the courtyard, says Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says not all courtyards require a porter's lodge as a gatehouse. A resident of the city may be compelled to contribute to building of a wall, folding doors, and a crossbar. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says not all towns require a wall. So therefore you cannot force people to pay taxes for a wall. This would seem to show that a gatehouse is an improvement, right? The fact that I can tax people to build a gatehouse. Yet, how can this be? There was a certain pious man with whom Elijah used to converse until he made a gatehouse. Do you guys have gated communities where you live? So here, everybody's into these gated communities, right? When I grew up, there were no gated communities. I don't live in a gated community. Streets. There were these gated communities. Elijah used to talk with him every day. He'd come by, talk. But when he made a gatehouse, after which he didn't converse with him anymore. Why do you think Elijah stopped coming by?
He couldn't get in.
But
Right?
well, maybe he couldn't get in, but he is Elijah. I mean, like, he hangs out in heaven. He goes to every bris. I mean, he can get around. Do you guys know that about going to every bris? So Elijah did Lashon Hara about the Jewish people. He said, look, he said, my God, these people, they've abandoned your covenant. So God said, you think they've abandoned my covenant? You know what? They have a bris, a covenant, every time they have a baby. So you're going to go and watch. So every bris, they say Elijah attends, and we have a special chair for him. So there's a special chair that we have at a bris, and it's called Kisei Shel Eliyahu, the chair of Elijah. That's Elijah. So Elijah miraculously visits you if you're at a certain level. Very high level, you get a visit from Elijah. So he stops coming, right? Because if you don't welcome the stranger, you're not at that level. Right? I don't think it's as much practical as much as like if you're not welcoming the stranger. And the other thing is, okay, so and it says in one case we suppose the gatehouse is inside the courtyard and the other outside. So why would it be better for the gatehouse to be in the courtyard and bad for it to be outside the courtyard? If a poor person comes to your gate asking for charity, to your gatehouse, can you hear them?
It's like, are you welcome to come in?
Well, we'll get the welcome to come in, right? That's going to be the latch, right? Again, we may suppose in both cases there's a door. In one case there's a latch, the other there's no latch. So maybe if there's a door handle on the outside that they can come in, it's okay. But if there's no door handle on the outside, right? You're standing on the inside, you've got your door handle, you don't let them in, then it's not okay.
The gatehouse is on the outside. It's not really a kind of a welcome invitation. If it's on the inside, you
Okay,
come in
right,
and ask.
right. So
And
maybe it said it's not welcoming, and the other, or maybe it's practical. Maybe like you can't even hear them, right? And this is what Rashi says. If a poor person comes and they're crying out and they say, "I need your help," in these communities here, the gatehouse is like at the beginning of a drive, and then you have like a couple hundred feet, then you have the neighborhood. So if someone came there crying for help, no one would hear them, right? We want to be able to hear our neighbor. Um, it was
What about
so.
a fire emergency?
Yep, they come and you mean
He can,
inside your courtyard or outside?
but he
Yeah,
can
it's
lock on the outside, and then everybody's gonna be trapped in the inside.
um I assume that though there's also a latch on the inside. I would just have to assume. Like I can't imagine they're locking themselves from the outside. There must be both. Um, right, but it's not good, right? It's not an improvement to live in a way that we're locking people out and not inviting people in. It was taught. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says not all cities require a wall. A town adjoining a frontier requires a wall, but a town which is not adjoining the frontier does not require a wall. Why would a town on the frontier need a wall? Because it could be attacked, right? We're worried about being invaded. They hold that, and the rabbis who say that any town can have a wall, it may happen to be attacked by a roving band. So who are we trying to keep out?
the Amalekites.
Yeah, the Amalekites, the criminals. We don't want invading hordes of barbarians, right? That's who we're keeping out. It's totally legitimate, right? So I don't know, was it you, Ben, or someone else asked me, well, but Rabbi, what about Hamas? It's like, yes, of course you keep Hamas out. Of course, right?
Wasn't me, but I would have.
Um, right. So and actually we have to keep Hamas out. We have to build those walls. On the other hand, when someone is when someone is one of those, ethical, and they're just coming and they're just coming for whatever reason, that's a different story, right? Then they're in that category where we have to love them as ourselves. Any comments or questions on this before I move on?
When I worked overseas servicing contracts for a couple of defense contractors, we lived in a subdivision that was made up entirely of expatriates from all the countries that worked for the corporations that had contracts inside of that country. And it was a walled community with curtilages along each house. It was called the kill zone. So if they made it past the gate, it was not, you had to have business inside the subdivision or live in the subdivision in order to get in. But if someone jumped a wall, say in the middle of the night or whatever, the curtilage was constructed so that the bullets would not go into your neighbor's house.
Well, I guess Elijah's not visiting them.
No, it's sort of this was in Central America. But yeah,
Uh,
it was an interesting construct, and we walked around armed all the time.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. So now we get, that was Talmud, and this is the Torah, which is like a halacha compendium. A question to my Lord and Father the Rosh. A Jew wants to go to a town to live there and earn money. The people of the town say, "You're decreasing our livelihood," and wish to distance him from their border. So can they keep him out and say, "Sorry, you can't move here"? Answer: they cannot prevent them. The Talmud only talks about a person who lives in a different town and is coming to set up a mill or store in a different place, and they're not included in their tax. The citizens can prevent them. But it's an obvious thing, a person can live wherever they want, and the citizens of the town cannot prevent them. Did the original settlers acquire the land through legal purchase? What's that last line saying? That's kind of an interesting line. What's that saying? Were the Jews legal immigrants in the land of Canaan?
No, they were paid taxes.
well, they
Well, we will
conquered it. They
we
had
conquered
title
it,
by conquest.
right? So what's he saying in the end, though? What's that? What's his argument?
If you conquered it, you don't have legal title.
Um, I mean, the way I read the ending, I could be totally off, right? Is like, no one said they could be there, right? Like they still go there, like they went wherever they want. Like people can go wherever they want. Um, you know, we're well, most of us
You're
at
talking
some
about the
point
chain of
in our
title.
was it? At
You're
some
talking
point
about
there was
chain
no
of
title.
title.
Yeah, there was no chain of title, right? Everyone in a certain sense, if you go back to it, you could say that they're illegally. Okay, now this is going to be the opposing viewpoint, and I love his reasoning. I love the logic behind his viewpoint. Ben, would you like to read this one? I think you'd appreciate his argument.
Oh, yeah, by all means. Bet Yosef Adlock. The Mahari, chapter 191, extensively discusses these rulings and writes answers like the Rosh, that a person can live wherever he wants, and the citizens of the town cannot prevent him. It is obvious that he meant to say that the citizens cannot prevent them by way of Beit Din. But if they are able to close the door in their face, whether by way of the secular authorities or by way of any block, it is obvious that they have that option. And the only person who would disagree with this must be stubborn and twisted, uncomprehending, and unfit to rule. Yeah, I like that. I work
You
with
like his
stubborn,
argument?
twisted people all day long.
So, what do you guys think of his argument? It's argument by insult. Um, right. So what do you think of what he's saying?
He's making a Kissinger realpolitik argument. The reality is, if we can pull someone else in on our side to be allied with our viewpoint in contravention of the Talmud, we're welcome to do so.
Right. So we can't do it, but we could get someone else to do it. Right. Um, which feels to me like it's totally violating the intention of the Talmud, and obviously, his logic isn't based on any text, any source, just on insult. Which is, I don't know, it's an okay way to make an argument. Any other?
I would call that the Mississippi rule.
What's the Mississippi rule?
Uh, if even if we don't go along with it, we can find someone else that goes along with us, we can enforce the law against them regardless of what the law actually says.
Right, right. So, right, his solution, his approach, right, is basically, well, just find a way around it. So obviously, I think I don't love his approach. And I think it's not based on anything. And if you're resorting to insults as your reasoning, that means you're pretty desperate, right? Because if he had something to base it on, he would base it on that. But the fact is, he has nothing to base it on, so he just insults you if you disagree with him.
The problem
Any
is
other?
this
Yeah.
one simple little passage would take, it's such a twisted piece of spaghetti that it would take, he says it in one paragraph, it would take you 6 or 7 pages to undo his argument and show how he's wrong.
Yeah, I guess. But we're already up. We're up to page 10. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, one more piece. I know it's 12:45. Um, I think we can go a couple more minutes. So there's a rule about a runaway slave, and this gets into refugees, right? Because refugees aren't only coming because, okay, I'd like to earn more money. It's like they're fleeing something, and that's a very different situation. You shall not turn over to his master a slave who seeks refuge with you from his master. He shall live with you in any place you may choose among the settlements in your midst, wherever he pleases. You must not ill-treat him. Now, keep in mind, the Torah allows slavery. It does not get rid of slavery. It allows Jews to own slaves. But when there's a runaway slave, you don't return him to his master. Um, so why are they treated different from other, like, what is this saying? What?
Because
Yeah.
he's running away, and he's running away. There must be a reason for running away.
Yeah. So there must be something he's running away from. It must be really bad. And even though he's a slave, we don't want him treated really bad. So the Torah allows for slavery, but it does not allow for the mistreatment of slaves. Um, does this apply to refugees, the current day refugees? What do you think?
Mm. That depends.
Let's say a refugee who's fleeing violence, right? And they're fleeing gang violence from, you know, wherever certain parts of, to pick on Mexico again, certain parts of southern Mexico, right? They're fleeing gang violence. Does it apply to someone fleeing gang violence?
Yeah. Yes.
I would say so, right? Because we're concerned about no one being mistreated. We're concerned, and we don't want to send them back to a situation where they're being mistreated. Um, any other thoughts on that question? I really wouldn't mind if someone wanted to argue with me.
Um, I know I don't want to argue.
Melina, go ahead. You really don't need to raise your hand.
I don't want to argue, but don't you think? Let's imagine that we have our own land without
Yeah,
any conflict related to these stories today. Okay, Hamas, Gaza, I don't know.
yeah.
If we imagine that we are living in another world. In this case, people who are not Jewish or who are not converts, okay, and they come and live in the land of Israel. You don't think there shall be an obligation for them from halacha, I mean, to respect Jewish law?
No, 7 Noahide laws. So the
Okay.
7 Noahide laws include idolatry, not doing idolatry, not murdering, no incest.
I mean, in
Well,
the Jewish value, let's say. I'm not really
so
talking about laws.
yeah, and I understand what you're saying. Like, we want to create a society that has positive values. Well, why would we allow someone to live here who follows basic ethics but is like a jerk, right? Why would we allow someone who brings in bad values? Um, I certainly see the argument. I see your reasoning, right? In America, it's kind of this idea of cultural cohesion, right? What happens to our society when we bring in, like, you know, whatever elements? Um, halachically, it it really right. I go back to that Rambam who says we have to love them as long as they follow the 7 Noahide laws. Yeah, Samantha.
And how would that apply if somebody, say, committed a crime, maybe not anything too
So
terrible, but back in there,
yeah.
I mean,
So
just,
7 no
I
yeah,
mean, outside of that, like a crime that, like, they embezzle, I mean, I guess, $1 million.
yeah,
They didn't do anything violent. They didn't do
right.
anything that was I mean,
So one of the seven Noahide laws is establishing a system, a court system. So following the laws is part of the seven Noahide laws. So for sure, right, embezzling, right, you're breaking a law. That in a sense is breaking the seven Noahide laws. And then that gets to the whole thing. Well, what about a speeding ticket? What about like, the argument now where, oh, well, if you've entered the country illegally, then you are that was breaking a law. So by definition, now you've already violated the seven no-hide laws. Um, I think it's kind of harsh to say that someone. I don't think any, you know, I don't think most people would say that someone who's done a speeding ticket has violated the seven no-hide laws, right? So, but I know that's kind of the argument people make here.
Let's see if I can get it on the channel.
But definitely embezzlement, right? That's just they've broken the seven no-hide laws. No, they don't. They don't have that right to live here. But what if they're just a jerk, right? That goes to Melina's question, right? What if they're a jerk? What if they're spreading hate and there's no law against hate? And it's hard because
All they have is all
the
adults.
halacha tells us to love them even if even if they have those attitudes. Yeah, Melina.
Rabbi, I know we are running out of time. Just to say
Yeah.
something very quickly. For example, I am living in a secular country, okay, which called France. And if I cannot stand with this secular country, what does it mean, a secular country? It means if I want to practice my religion, which is Judaism, I am not allowed to, show it, or we say it in French, imposer, that I force other people to respect me because I'm a Jew. You understand, kind of? And I see our cousins who are living in France, and they try to impose. For example, they will tell you, especially in Paris these days, why you are wearing a very short skirt, for example. You see, because from other laws, other religions is not appropriate. So when I ask about Jewish law, I meant really that if they accept to come to a country that their main religion is Judaism, they shall respect the minimum way Jewish way. You see,
So
I don't know if I have. I mean, it's for me. It's more
Yeah.
than the 10 laws.
The seven. Okay, but halachically, it's the seven laws, right? Halachically, that's Rambam. It's the seven laws. I hear you. That you're saying, hey, well, maybe it should be more. Right? Maybe the bar should be higher. Traditionally, that's where they make it's a very low bar.
I just
Okay.
want to point out at the time that was a very radical concept.
What's that?
When the idea of allowing the foreign-born slave refuge, that was a very radical concept at the time that appeared in Deuteronomy, because that was not the way of the ancient world at all. Property was property. I mean, so, we're dealing with it now because it's not so radical, because we have asylum provisions here in our country. But even then, when those were proposed, there was a lot of argument against them at that time. So, this is not anything new. It's a matter of human dignity. Our morning prayers every morning say, "Remember, you were once strangers."
Right.
So,
right. So, and then the last explicitly about refugees, the last quote is, if refugees come to a settlement fleeing fear and danger, the residents of the settlement may not stop them from attaching themselves and making enough money to keep themselves alive and caring for the households until the fury abates. So, right, from a Jewish perspective, my opinion, right, it's the very notion of keeping people out and saying they can't come in is very problematic. So hopefully I hope this country will turn around and will be more welcoming, and certainly all of us can do what we can to welcome refugees and strangers. So it's been great having some of you. I guess there are a couple of you are new and joining, and that's great. I would be happy. We have a Talmud class every Thursday at noon. And I actually would consider I'm considering doing a series on contemporary social issues, like Talmudic passages. Let me know if you're interested in joining us on a weekly basis for the class. It's been great having you guys join. And if you're staying here for Hebrews, please stand. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.